Hello and welcome to another episode of Attacking Third, a CBS Sports soccer podcast. I'm Sandra Herrera, joined today by my colleague and co-host, Lisa Roman. We're both here to bring you NWSL analysis, critiques. This is going to be a news and notes episode. We've got some things to get into on the NWSL side of things, and we want to take a look at some Olympic things on the horizon. Ready to get into all this. Lisa, how are you doing today?
I'm good. This is our second episode of the week. As a reminder, Attacking Third is coming to your airwaves 3 times a week, at least 3 times a week. And we're here to do this one, bring you all the updates that are happening. And Sandra, I'm good. I'm ready for this. Love talking about soccer, and I'm so excited to do it with you.
I can't believe that we've got one whole episode under our belts already. And here we are getting ready to jump into this second one. And this is kind of going to be like a nice one. I think, we had sort of a recap style for our listeners in that first episode. Now we've got this one here in the middle. And then we'll obviously have some previewing going on for everyone for this weekend's NWSL games, as well as the upcoming Olympics. But for now, there was a little bit of news for NWSL. San Diego NWSL, the newest team that is going to be arriving in 2022 for the league, rounding out things to 12 clubs for the league. A lot of news for 2022 already. We had the announcement of Angel City FC. Los Angeles is getting a club. And then California said, hold on a second, we need more. And San Diego made their arrival. And both of these clubs have been really making some headlines recently. And on San Diego, when they made their official announcement, their official introduction to say, hey, we are going to be the next expansion franchise, they did so with a little bit of a splash in announcing Jill Ellis, the former United States women's national team head coach, as president for this soon-to-be named club. For now, they're NWSL San Diego. But Jill Ellis already making moves for San Diego, hiring Molly Downton as the general manager to sort of oversee things for NWSL San Diego. What do you think of this hire, Lisa?
I mean, it's exciting to have San Diego NWSL being announced and having another club join the league. To see the league growing and expanding is constantly exciting. And I love this. And this is an interesting hire. I mean, I think it's a good hire for sure as the GM of San Diego. Molly was with the US women's national team before alongside Jill Ellis. So she's been in that coaching tree for a while. She has experience. She understands both sides of the game in that sense. Back when she was with the US women's national team and in that sense of it, she was officially the team administrator. So she handled a lot of the off the field issues that happened and problems that arose, and really squashed those as best as she could. And now that she's stepping into this GM role, she's going to have more of a hands-on approach to what happens on the field, which will be a different look for her. I think she's up to the task, though. It's a tall task for sure, but I think if you have Jill Ellis, you can hang your hat on that. If she's throwing your name into the ring, it's a very credible source to have a reference like Jill Ellis saying that you can do this job and she will stand up to the task. I think it's a good hire. I'm a little curious to see how things will iron out over the next weeks and months to see what she does in her role as GM. Sandra, do you think that this is a good fit for her?
I think maybe looking at her background, this is, possibly a next logical step, sort of going with what she was doing as a team admin with the U.S. women's national soccer team. But even prior to her time there, being out in University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign as a director of soccer operations. So there's just all these things where you're like, what's my next logical step? But I'm just wondering with the title of GM, like what NWSL San Diego is going to be looking for from their GM. Because when Sandra thinks of a general manager, for me, I'm thinking a general manager is going to be tasked with, assembling a team, putting together a team, essentially doing the work to, sort of scout players and figure out how and what your team is going to look like moving forward. So they've got some time because 2022 is on the horizon, although not too far away because we're flying through this year. But I'm excited to see, what both of these women could sort of bring to NWSL San Diego. And I think a huge part of that is going to be, the fact that they have those connections. Quite frankly, you're talking about two women who have, been around some of the biggest names in women's soccer. And that's probably going to be a do them a big service when they're trying to, potentially recruit or scout or take a look at the landscape of players that they might want to bring on to build their team around. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's always exciting to see. It's always going to be exciting to see women named in these roles and named in these positions. So I'm always going to be eager and supportive and excited to see what they can do behind these titles, these titles of president or these titles of general manager. So I'm excited for it. I think we won't be able to pass any judgment in terms of how everything really truly plays out until we finally see that team and how they start putting together performances and wins. But for now, I'm excited.
And for someone like Molly, she was involved before 2019 World Cup. So she knows the players, maybe not necessarily in a coaching perspective or a GM perspective, but she knows them. She worked with them off the field a lot to kind of put out those little fires that popped up everywhere. So she knows the players that she's dealing with. And now it's just trying to see them through a different lens to assemble the best team in San Diego that she can. Because like you said, that's her role now as GM, to kind of gather the players in, establish a roster and what's going to happen. But no passing judgment until she actually takes some first steps and does her first couple of things. But the women being hired in these roles is really good. These are good steps we're taking in this women's soccer world.
Absolutely. And it's always exciting to take a look at what the expansion teams are going to be potentially bringing to the league. I know there was a lot of excitement for Racing Louisville FC, all of the things that they were building up to, whether it was just things like, unveiling their crest or their colors, the official name of the club. And, we saw that with Angel City officially, christening themselves as Angel City FC, coming out with their branding, their colors, their crest, really positive response from that. So we still are going to have to await that kind of stuff from San Diego as well. So 2 teams coming in 2022 once this NWSL season ends into October and then November with the playoffs. There's probably going to be a real quick turnaround, maybe the expansion draft on the horizon. So this is not going to be the first or last time that we're probably chatting about this team or the West Coast teams in particular ahead of 2022. So congrats to Molly Downton, and we'll probably be revisiting some things here for sure. But looking ahead a little bit, because this is episode 2 of a multi-week episode, we've got some Olympics on the horizon, and we've got a lot of great content coming up. And we've actually got a lot of great content right now. If I will shamelessly plug my work, if you head over to CBS.
Sandra, we are here for the plugs.
I'm here for
all the plugs.
I am. I'm going to be plugging it right now. Here's your plug. Over on CBSSports.com right now, you can hit up our NWSL Star Power Index. And the Star Power Index is a lot of fun for me because I get to take a look at players throughout the league, performances that they're putting in, players that I think are really generating a lot of buzz, quite frankly, for the league, who are standing out over, week-to-week performances and stuff like that. But we're entering a really, really interesting stretch of the season. It's the summer portion of the schedule. So the Olympics are on the horizon. They're going to be kicking off very soon. But a lot of these clubs have already been without key and significant players on their teams. So there's no break in this NWSL schedule. They are going to be playing through these Olympic Games. So we're going to be taking a look at some players, probably getting some significant minutes, probably putting together some really big performances for their team down this summer stretch to pick up some points on the table. And I just sort of selected 4 for now, because the truth is, Lisa, is that we can probably keep our eye on every single player that's going to be playing in all of these games during this July and early August portion of the schedule. But for me, I rolled with 4 players for now. I tried to spread things out, show love to like a forward, a defender, a goalkeeper, a midfielder, keep things even, and maybe take a look at teams who were missing some key players on their club. So for me, I'm keeping an eye on Andy Sullivan, Didi Heritage, Kayla Sharples, and Morgan Weaver. And do you agree, disagree? Are you watching anyone else in particular coming up during this stretch of games?
I agree with who you've called out. I think Andy Sullivan proved last week in the Washington Spirit game that she is a force. She's a force to be reckoned with, a quiet leader, but she is someone that will make waves. And now that she can slide into that Washington Spirit midfield and be the best player on the team, I think it'll help her grow, take on those leadership roles, and take a lot of steps forward for her. Definitely keep an eye on her. Didi Heritage, we've been watching her all year, even throughout the Challenge Cup. She's been a player that has raised the bar for herself and for Gotham overall as a goalkeeper standard in this league. Every time she steps into goal, there's no drop off of skill or play or intensity by any means. Morgan Weaver, I agree, for Portland. And you also mentioned Kayla Sharples, defense for Chicago. I agree with all of yours. You touched on this. There's always players that you can be watching in this league, especially with those national team players gone for the Olympics. There's spaces opening up, and it's not just starting spaces, but also players that now have the opportunity to be on the bench that weren't named. So those national team replacement players that have signed contracts, they're looking to get minutes, probably not starting minutes, but they're going to get minutes and time on the field, which they haven't seen before. So all of these teams have people you can really look out for. I am looking at some other teams as well. Houston has a lot of players missing. You didn't mention them in your 4, but I understand lots of teams, you can't cover them all. Katie Naughton, the center back for Houston. She didn't have the best weekend last weekend. She did score that own goal, but besides that, she has 2 header goals on the season. She plays that center back position, and every time Houston has a set piece in and around the 18, she's up there and she's scoring goals. I foresee her getting a few more over these next couple of weeks, and it's not going to be worldy shots from the top of the 18. It'll be set piece goals that we see from Katie Naughton. And defensively, she will continue to be the leader in the back line for the Dash. I think she's definitely a player to look at. And if we're sticking with Houston, Jasmine Spencer, she's making her mark on this Houston
Absolutely.
Dash team. She scored an incredible goal last weekend, and I think there's more to come for her. She's definitely fired up now with this Houston Dash team. She came over in May from OL Reign, so there's a bit of an adjustment that'll happen, but she'll get more time and starting minutes with the Dash over these next couple of weeks. And those players for Houston, I'm definitely looking at. But the league overall, there's so many players that are going to be popping up. I might have different ones for you next week based on what happens this weekend, and now that every player is gone for the Olympics, there's no other teams or
Yeah.
countries hanging around starting this weekend.
Yeah, it's so tough putting these things together because it's like God, it's like so many players are putting in so many good, strong individual performances for their clubs, and honestly, like a lot of these players have been doing it already for a couple of weeks because certain teams have been without certain key players to the Olympics for a little while now. Like this isn't just the first weekend of games that we took a look at and recapped where players were missing for the Olympics. I mean, the Canadian international players have been gone for quite some times, and their alternates ended up staying, I think, an extra week, but ended up, dipping out themselves. And yeah, I think when you're bringing in a team into to highlight like Canada, you're absolutely got to look at a team like Houston because they have so many great Canadian internationals, and it makes total sense to take a look at a defensive player on that back line, considering they lost an outside back in Alyssa Chapman for Canada. And then in that forward top line in Jasmine Spencer, considering they lost, a winger in Michelle Prince. So there's a ton. I'm so excited. I'm really so excited for the league during this particular stretch of games, because you really get to see some of that depth for all of these rosters, which quite frankly, so many of these teams brag about. Like, they get real braggadocious about the depth of their rosters. And it's like, this is the time. This is the time to see it. And we started to see like some real threads of that over this last week or so. Even if it was something like an own goal from Katie Naughton, like you still look at that player and you're like, she's gonna have a big impact for this team defensively moving forward. But then even on the other side of that particular game, looking at somebody like Kayla Sharples, who's similar profile, like these are both two players, Chicagoland area kids, both playing center back positions for two different teams in the league, and are probably going to be really relied upon. I mean, Chicago is missing multiple pieces on their back line in Casey Kruger and Tierna Davidson. And Kayla Sharple's been part of manifesting not one but two own goals already, for the Chicago Red Stars. So it's gonna be exciting. There's gonna be a lot of soccer for women's soccer fans to take a look at this summer. That obviously, of course, includes the Olympics, but that's also going to include NWSL, because no breaks. Soccer never sleeps. But yeah, take a look at that. We've got those. We've got that up on CBSSports.com for you. Let us know who else you're going to be keeping an eye on during this Olympic stretch in the NWSL. But yeah, with the Olympics on the horizon, I'm so excited to look ahead a little bit to our next episode, because we're plugging the work. We're doing the plugs. This is the plug episode. We are going to be joined by a special guest, and we're excited to preview all things Olympics with Lori Lindsay. So shout out to her. Everybody get ready for that. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button and you will get that automatically in your downloads. But 12 teams, it's exciting. And there's a course tying this in a little bit to NWSL. There's always, with Olympics, sometimes there's a little bit of drama when you get to the international level sometimes. And ahead of these matches, Lisa, that took place over the last weekend, we saw some interesting reporting coming out from ESPN. There were some, we'll just say some interesting comments from former U.S. Women's National Team head coach and former Orlando Pride coach, Tom Sermanni, who is now the head coach of New Zealand. And he just expressed in this ESPN news just some real disappointment in not being able to have two particular players released to the national team for the Olympics, while so many other players have departed for the Olympics. So it just sort of feels like there's some missing pieces from some of this. Well, what were some of your impressions from his comments in this article, Lisa?
As a commentator in the NWSL, seeing that the New Zealand players were still around for last weekend's matches, I was excited as a fan to say, hey, we get this high caliber play before they head off to the Olympics. It was good to see those players still on the roster. It was surprising. I would say it was surprising. And then after the comments came that head coach of New Zealand was not too happy that his players were still competing in the NWSL, my initial reaction after I read the article was, I think we're missing part of the story. Why were all these other teams allowed and released from their NWSL teams? All these other nations allowed their players to come and New Zealand couldn't. Was it perhaps a player's decision to get another game under their belt if New Zealand wasn't going to have a competitive scrimmage before the start of the Olympics, if it would just be team training? I think there's missing pieces here, and we don't have the full story, because as a coach, if I was the head coach of New Zealand, I would be upset as well. Why aren't my players here? Why aren't they coming? And for teams that Orlando Pride, North Carolina Courage, that had those players, it's great to have them for one more weekend, get those 3 points, try to stick in the NWSL and in the standings before you send them off. So I think we're missing part of the story here, but they're gone now. Those
Yeah.
New Zealand players are headed to Tokyo. They're in Tokyo already, scrimmaging, training with their teams. And now the focus for them just has to be on the Olympics and competing with their international team and in their group to get out of the group stages and move on and upward through the Olympics.
I think that's fair. I think that's a fair assessment for sure. Missing pieces as always sometimes in reporting, but I also think it's fair to say that, if it was a player decision, which we do not know, if it was, hey, Ali Riley and Abby Yersick should be allowed to do what they want, quite frankly. And we're gonna see them get into some Olympic action very, very soon over in the Olympics, which again, so excited about. This was the plug episode, like I said. So we're excited to chat NWSL news when it happens. We're excited to chat up our work, the content that we're producing for you guys over in the CBS Sports side of things, and future episodes that are coming up. So look out for the Olympic preview coming up with Lori Lindsay, and we're also really, really excited to drop an episode that we had worked on a little while and kind of are excited to unleash onto the world. We had a special segment with Rose Lavelle ahead of the Olympics, and we chatted about all kinds of great stuff. So look out for that on the horizon as well. The Olympics are here, Lisa, as far as I'm concerned. The opening ceremonies haven't kicked off yet, but in terms of the mindset, we're there. We're mentally.
We are here. We are here. I'm excited for it. I hope the US goes far. I'm cheering for them. Come on, US women's national team, but they're in a really tough group. It's not going to be an easy road ahead for them.
Nah, we have arrived. The Olympics. We here at Attacking Third, we have arrived and we are excited about it. So everybody, please stay tuned and keep a lookout for all the awesome episodes that are coming up next. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Quick reminder to follow us on Twitter at Attacking Third. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere you listen to podcasts. We're also available as video. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Just visit youtube.com/Attacking Third. We'll be back on Friday with another episode. For Sandra Herrera and Lisa Roman, this was Attacking Third.